because we're going to dive into these passages, because I promise you, this is where most people get tripped up, and then they ignore all those other scriptures I gave you about what God said was eternal and what's going to happen in the millennial reign. They just want to ignore all those because of what they think Genesis chapter 1, verse 29 and 30 says. So let's look at these passages real quick. It says, "Then God said, Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that's on the surface of all the earth, and every tree which is fruit yielding seed. It shall be food for you, and to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth, which is life, I've given every green plant for food." And it was so. This is where people would say, see, Sean, see, look, before the fall, they were all vegetarian. Everything was vegetarian. They're before the fall. Adam didn't eat meat. Guys, this is not what the original language says. This is a translation into English. So we're going to jump into the Greek, the oldest manuscript of language from Genesis that we have on record in history. And we're going to see that not only does this statement, if this statement, according to how it's translated into English, is valid, then it contradicts everything else I just read to you previously. And we've got bigger problems, because now we got problems with the validity of our Bibles. But here's the good news. That's not the case. So look at this, what I've highlighted here on the screen. These little connectors, these little connection words, right? To every beast of the earth, to every bird of the sky, to everything that moves on the earth, which has life. Let's go into the actual Greek, and anyone can do this. This is not something that only I can do. Anyone can do this. If you go to blueletterbible.com and you go to Genesis 1:29 and 30, and you go to specifically Genesis 1:30, and you look up the actual Greek and you translate it, the kai, the paz, the ho, the therion, the ho, the gi, the kai, the paz, the ho, the tetevo. If you go into the actual Greek and look at what these words are, that little word "to" is not in there anywhere. That has been inserted by translators because that's what they think it says. But that's not what the actual passage in the language of Greek says. So that's good news for us, because now we have solidarity and continuity of idea and theology in our Bible. Those twos are not in the original language. We take them out. Genesis 1:29 and 30 would read similar to saying, "Then God said, Behold, I've given you every green plant yielding seed that's on the surface of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed. It shall be food for you, and every beast of the earth, and every bird of the sky, and everything that moves on the earth, which has life. I've given every green plant for food." And it was so. So this passage would be just the Father listing off different categories of things that he's speaking to Adam to say, "I've given you food." These are the different major large categories of food that you can eat out of. So therefore, we have not only continuity with the eternal Torah that's being kept in heaven by the Father and the angels, because they've been doing this sacrifice of Jubilees of the Feast of Shavuot. The angels have been doing the Feast of Shavuot in this moment. So in the years that Adam is still in the Garden of Eden, which was 7 years before he got kicked out, that means the angels in heaven had celebrated the Feast of Shavuot 7 different times, and that instruction for Shavuot requires bringing forward holy gifts and sacrifices, which means an animal, according to the law, specifically specific types of animals. The Father is not hypocritical. He doesn't have a double standard. In Psalm 118, 1-3, he says that his Torah, his instructions, his ordinances, they're his behavior. That's what he does. That's why Jubilee says that they keep the feasts in heaven. That's why the prophecies in Isaiah and Ezekiel and Revelation, we're keeping the feast in Zechariah, we're keeping the feasts when heaven, the kingdom of heaven, inside the kingdom of heaven, the Father's behavior is kept by everybody. It has to be. That's the big rule. His house, his ways. These are his ways he's explaining to us. In his big house, in his kingdom, Shavuot's being kept every year. It's being kept every year right now, and it has been since creation began, specifically also during this time that we're looking at in Genesis 1:29 and 30, the first 7 years of Adam's life. God's not giving Adam different instructions than he himself keeps. He's not giving him some different diet than he himself keeps. This is why in Genesis 7, Noah is putting 7 pairs of clean and 2 pairs of unclean on the boat. He knows which animals are for food and which are not. And if you're not familiar with that idea, please go check Genesis 7, and then also go check Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14. It tells you which animals, specifically animals, not plants, but animals, are good for eating and which are not, because some are not good for eating. The Father knew all this from the very early beginning in Genesis 1 when he's telling Adam, here's the big, large categories of things. He doesn't go through every plant. He doesn't go through everything that yields seed. He doesn't go through every single tree. He just generically encapsulates the beasts of the earth, birds of the sky, everything that moves on the earth, the trees, the shrubs, the fruit-bearing things. He's just given these big categories, but Torah was taught to Adam, and this is what we see later in Jubilees 3 and 4. But the whole concept here is that the same instructions that are given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that are given to Enoch, to Noah, to Moses and Aaron, to all of the Israelites, the same instructions that are kept by Yeshua in heaven right now, those instructions were abided by Adam on the earth while he was alive. That is part of the law of God. So, in the actual original language, before the translators get a hold of it and start inserting words according to what they think it should say, we have a very clear list of large categorical items that the Father said Adam could eat. And I included animals, beasts of the earth, winged creatures, and everything that moves on which has life. Now, then there would be furthering instructions, just like in all of context and all of Scripture. You're going to look for context, right? You don't just take one passage and build a doctrine off of it. So we know that the rest of the law of God starts to specify within these large categories what is food and what is not. That's why Genesis 1 is a summary anyway. It doesn't tell you all the details anyway. So this is the big summary of categories available for Adam to eat. This is why it's consistent, since Adam kept the law of God, the commandments, and so did Noah. That's why Noah in Genesis 6:8 is called righteous. That means he had right behavior. This is why he is walking with God. The only way you get to do that is to keep God's behavior. And that behavior did not change between Adam and Noah. It's the same behavior. So here, that's why we have continuity in Genesis chapter 9, 1 through 3, where it says that, I'm going to pull this up larger to see, and God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the terror of you will be on every beast of the earth and on every bird of the sky and with everything that creeps on the ground, all the fish into the sea, all the fish of the sea, into your hands they are given. Every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you. I give it all to you as I gave the green plant. So he's listing all these same categories again, but this one even actually includes fish. And yes, by the way, guys, I know that veganism is more than just vegetarianism. I know there's much more strict concepts of what they will and will not allow in all their different types of food, not just the ingestion of meat. But I know that one of the stalwarts in most vegan diets is milk, because it comes from it's an animal byproduct, is what they say. But why would the Father tell us and describe heaven as a land of milk and honey? Because, guys, these diets that are against the Father's instructions, like you can't keep Shavuot, you cannot keep Passover. You're required to eat a lamb on Passover. You can't do that if you're choosing to not eat meat. It gets very dicey. Okay, so West Blaze is expounding that pescatarians, they only eat fish. They don't eat meat. They only eat fish, basically. So yeah, I'm trying to remember it. But basically, this is the Father including all of it together in the same concept.